I recently had a long conversation with Frojax, and right now the video's up on Rumble, if you want to go check it out. And one of the conversation topics I brought up was whether Jews are white, because I never really had a definitive answer from them. And boom, truth nuke. I have Jewish ancestry. I mentioned that, and they were respectful about it, but they said that they'd probably deport me because of it. And the comments were funny because one of the top comments was, "So he's a Romanian Jew passing as European, and he hid this info? He literally lied about his ethnicity and race and kept it hidden. So when he was saying the Italian side went out and that's why he's dark, he was lying." And I don't know what that means. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. It's because he's a Jew. Oh my God, he is a walking stereotype. He gets deported, especially his mother's side. He literally lied about. Okay. Yeah, so basically, that was one of the top comments. You had a bunch of people agreeing with it. So yeah, okay. I guess despite the fact that I'm 90% European ethnically, I'm not a white person. I'm a Jew. I'm an enemy of the white race. So it's funny. It's also sad, but I think it's an important topic that I want to talk about today about whether Jews are white or not, and also more so into how much race really matters. Now, the thing is, I always considered myself white first and foremost, and yes, I was aware I had Jewish ancestry. However, it was like nothing more to me than just a curiosity. I was raised secular. Neither of my parents were religious, they were agnostic. Religion was never involved in the household. I've never had a bar mitzvah or anything that would classify me as a Jew by the standards, but I just knew I had that ancestry. Non-white people consider me white, and that's one of the reasons I even fell into white nationalism, was because I was lumped in with every other white person, and how badly white people were being disrespected, and I felt that disrespect as someone who's white, and that's why I became a white nationalist. That's why I kind of fell into that space. However, as I got into that space, I realized that there was a huge debate over whether Jews were white or not. And obviously, a lot of people like Frojax and their following don't consider Jews to be white. I think the answer is honestly just so much more nuanced than people want it to be made out to be. And one of the reasons I think that white nationalists and white supremacists say that Jews aren't white is because it's cope. And it's because they know that if Jews are white, then that means that white people are responsible for a lot of the evils in this world. And that's exactly what white nationalists and white supremacists don't want to believe. They want to believe that, oh, it's the Jews, the white man was civilizing and helping the world, and then the Jews came and they're the evil ones. It's the Jews that own the slave ships. It's the Jews that own the black people as slaves. No white people ever owned black slaves. You hear these ridiculous arguments, and it's all just a massive cope. And especially with the whole Epstein thing, you have a lot of non-whites who are using Epstein as an example of a white person who's abusing his power and molesting little kids and all these things. And then the response is, oh, well, Epstein is a Jew. And look, I get it that Jews do have their own identity, and a lot of cases, Jews will choose not to identify as white because it benefits them. However, I think the answer is just way more nuanced, because there are different kinds of Jews. You have Sephardics, you have Ashkenazis, you have Mizrahi. They lived in different parts of the world, and they integrated into the societies of the places they inhabited. For example, Mizrahi look more Middle Eastern. Sephardic look more Southern European, whereas Ashkenazis look more Eastern European, more and a little bit of like Western and even a little bit of Southern European themselves as well. If you just took away the Jewish identity from Ashkenazis, they would literally just be weird looking white people. I wouldn't even say they'd be weird looking, because a lot of Ashkenazis just look like Italians. A lot of them look like Greeks. Greeks and Italians are considered white. And Ashkenazi Jews cluster very closely with Southern Europeans. And yes, they do have a slight difference, but again, that'll just comes down to the frequency of alleles in their DNA. And that's simply because Jews have been very insular. While yes, they have mixed with outside groups, they also heavily mixed with each other. So there's way less genetic diversity within Ashkenazi populations and Jewish populations as a whole, because they were very insular. There's a lot of inbreeding going on with Jews. So of course they're going to have a slightly different DNA pattern from the groups that they are similar to. But again, at the end of the day, Take away the Jewish identity, what is left? They're just funny looking white people. And that's how most Jews in America are. Most secular Jews really are just, they're culturally white. They act like white people, they look like white people, they get along with white people, and they integrate into white communities without any problems. Yes, you have groups like the Hasidics and the Orthodox who I would dislike. I would say that if any group of Jews was going to be targeted, it would be the Orthodox and the Hasidics because they do refuse to integrate and they are very disrespectful. They are very rude and aggressive and hostile towards other groups, including other Jews. But even the Hasidics, when you actually go through a Hasidic neighborhood, which I've been through because I live in New Jersey, you can give Lakewood as an example. If you drive through Lakewood, most of the Hasidic Jews look white. They literally look European. I've seen Hasidic Jews with blonde hair and blue eyes. I've seen them with red hair. They have pale skin. If you just took away the clothing, you took away their cultural and racial identity, they would just pass as white people. And to everyone outside of white supremacists, Jews are white people. Non-whites consider Ashkenazi Jews as white. Most white people would just consider Ashkenazi Jews as white. The only people who really don't consider Ashkenazi Jews as white is some Ashkenazis when it benefits them, and also white supremacists. As someone who has some Jewish ancestry in me, I wanted to know where I would fit in the future of any kind of white nationalist movement in this country. And getting that answer and just seeing the response, I realized that a lot of Jews are definitely going to be excluded, if not all Jews, even the ones that are literally mostly white. And it's just crazy because there are just so many white people out there that just consider Jews as white. And there are so many Jews that just integrate into white neighborhoods that they're practically identical to the white people, other than they have that Jewish identity. But is it really any different that Irish people identify as Irish, that Italians identify with Italian? They're still considered white, but they have their own little identity. But when Jews want to identify as Jews, then no, you're not white, even though you look and act like a white person. And when it comes to where Jews are from, yes, they are from the Levant, and that is the Middle East. But just because they're from the Middle East doesn't mean they can't be white. I mean, you can go see Arabs. There are lots of Arabs who look white. You can find Arabs who have pale skin and red hair and blue eyes who are ethnically considered Arab. Then you have people who are ethnically European who look almost Middle Eastern. For example, a lot of Slavs look brown. They literally look almost like Middle Eastern people. They don't look stereotypically white. However, racially, genetically, they are still considered white. Now, this is where we get into like this hyper fixation on like genetic purity, where people like Frojax, the more I talk to them, the more I understand that their worldview, their morality is based entirely around natural law. It's based around Darwinism. And that's where we differ because Frojax, they are purely Darwinistic in their worldview. They believe in what they call natural law. Continuing their genetic lineage is more important than anything else. The reason I ever chose to become a white nationalist is not because, oh, I wanted to continue my genes, I wanted my group to survive. No, it's because I see the way white people are being treated, the way I've been treated for being white, and I felt it was wrong. It's wrong to treat any race of people the way that white people have been treated over the last few decades. It's wrong to deny people of a certain race the opportunity to be proud for themselves, to be proud of their history, and to want to associate with their own group and to support their own group. The same way it's wrong to do that to black people, the same way it's wrong to do that to Asian people. Frojax, on the other hand, they are, and with all due respect to them, because they were respectful to me, they are spiritually Israeli. And it's funny because when I mentioned that I have the Jewish ancestry, they were like, oh, well, why don't you just identify as a Jew? And I told them, because Judaism, Zionism, and Israel it is fundamentally evil. It is demonic. But they don't see it that way. And it's because they don't hate the Jews because of what they have done to the world. No, they hate the Jews because they want to be in the Jews' position. Frojax, they want Anglo-Saxons to do what Israel is doing. So they are fundamentally no different from Israelis. They are no different from the elitist Jews that are destroying the world right now. They just want it to be Anglo-Saxons who are on top. And sure, they see all other white people as like part of their racial group, but I can just tell from talking to them that they are kind of like Anglo-Saxon supremacists in a low-key way. And whatever, I get it, that's fine. If that's how you think, that's how you think. But that's just not how I think, and I don't think any race should be dominating one other race. And I think this hyperfixation on who's really white is retarded. If someone looks white and acts like a white person, what does it matter? Why do you have to fixate on, oh, like, oh, they're not perfectly Northern European, oh, they have some Levantine ancestry, or maybe they're mixed race? What does it matter if they just act like white people? They will just integrate into white society anyway. And that's really where I stand. I don't want a world where one race is dominating. I want a world where every group of people is thriving, where blacks are succeeding, where whites are succeeding, where Middle Easterners are succeeding, where Asians are succeeding, where the world is a beautiful canvas of different races of people who are all existing and thriving. I don't want this global homogeneity that is being pushed by the New World Order, but I don't want this white supremacist worldview that people like Frojax want either. Yes, I do think that Europeans have contributed significantly to the world, and I do think that, in a way, if anyone's going to be policing the world, it should be European powers. However, I think that outside of having European powers maybe be the central authority of the world, races should be left to their own devices. People should just be left in their homogenous communities to do what they please as long as it's not infringing on other groups. And yes, I acknowledge there are racial differences. I do think that, yes, there might be some IQ differences between races on average. There's definitely cultural differences that are influenced by race, and people are naturally racially biased. However, at the end of the day, we are all human beings, and I think all human beings have souls, and that there is a higher power that transcends this material world. And while we live in this material world, we do have to abide by the rules of this realm put on us by our DNA, by our cultures, by just the natural laws of this world. At the same time, I do believe there is a higher power, a higher spiritual authority that transcends the concept of race. So I guess that me calling myself a white nationalist is kind of anachronistic, and I'm kind of just using it for simplification's sake. I don't really like calling myself a white nationalist, but now, at this point, I guess I would just say I'm not a white nationalist, since a lot of white nationalists wouldn't consider me white anyway. And I would just say I'm just an advocate for white people, and I still consider myself white, even if a lot of the white people on my side might not. I would say I'm white, and I still want to prevent mass migration into the United States, and I want Europeans to do the same for themselves. If a group sharing an ideology like Frojax tries to take power in the future, I'm definitely not going to support them now, because I know how they think about me, how they feel about a lot of people that I care about, and, that's fine. They can have their views, but I consider myself a white American, and I grew up in this country. I integrated into the culture, and I have every right to be here, so. But anyway, if you disagree with me, if you don't like what I said, the unsubscribe button is right there, and feel free to unsubscribe. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, a comment, subscribe, and thank you for watching.